Hello and welcome to CLEA'S World. I am Clea, and today I will be sharing with you more of the information I've received from the 25th dimension during my last QHHT Hypnosis session. I'll be reading from a transcript of the session. I want to refer to Lorrayne. I'm speaking to my practitioner who's asking me questions I prepared in advance of the session. And when I refer to me, I'm speaking to myself under hypnosis, which means the answers are coming from the 25th. Without further ado, I'm going to jump in here. And here is the first question. Lorrayne, you have said that we have all aligned in this lifetime with our previously made choices of going with the aliens to 3D chambers or New Earth. But what about people who have chosen to go back to the 25th, like Jack and Nick? And now Jack is my ex-husband. This is not his real name. And Nick is a man that I met shortly after I was divorcing, or I divorced, or was in the middle of divorcing my ex-husband. And again, not his real name. These are the names that I use in my book when I wrote about the spirit of my life because of being so disappointed. So what about people that have gone back to the 25th, like these people, because of being so disappointed by their own behavior in this lifetime? Had they previously aligned with something different, since we all chose where we wanted to go 300 years ago at the time of the decision to take this down, and then they changed their mind at the last minute in this lifetime? Or did they align with the 25th from the beginning? So basically, I'm trying to figure out, first of all, why do I know so many people who have gone back to the 25th? Because this is not a popular choice. I'm like, is it something to do? Is it something to do with me? And secondly, also, how does this work? Like, I know that we can always change our minds, but I'm like, is this something that they would have planned for from the beginning, or was it a twist the last minute? Why would somebody make this choice? I was very curious about this. So here's the answer from the 25th. Yeah, when it came time to pick where we would go, when we decided on a takedown, everybody aligned with one of these choices, meaning 3D chambers, New Earth, or aliens. And of course, with the exception of the dark team, who aligned again with aliens, right? Just different planets. So aligning with the 25th was not one of the choices, not because it wasn't available, that is always available at all times, but because it wasn't like an exit point that we were envisioning for the takedown, meaning we weren't telling people, hey, would you like to take that opportunity to go back to the 25th? We don't even have to talk about it. We don't have to align with that because that's always the default. You could always do that, okay? So in that sense, it wasn't a choice given because it is always available. So in this particular case, Nick had aligned because Clay is curious and wants to know now. Nick had aligned with going with the aliens, and Jack actually had aligned with going to the 3D chambers, and neither one of them decided to go along with their original choice. This is just a reminder, which we talked about many times, that you can choose a different path at any point. Even right now, we said many times, you could turn and become part of the team of the dark if you wanted to. There are no rules and nothing that you have to do. You can absolutely do anything you want at any time. So in their case, in this case, they decided that, you know what, in hindsight, I think I just need a breather, so I'm going to move on. And that's fine. And this is how they felt. This is an emotional issue, and this is how they resolved it, which is perfectly fine and acceptable. And that's all there is to it. It has nothing really to do with Clea. Yeah, was it a disappointment with this last lifetime that would have been the trigger? Yes, we've already spoken about this, but something that could have happened whether Clea was or was not in the picture, because we know she's asking this because she's saying, wow, all these people that have been around me, all of a sudden I'm doing this work and they ended up in the 25th. How does that work? What is that? Is it me? And they're laughing because, of course, in hindsight, reading the answer, I'm like, well, that makes sense. But I've had moments where I'm like, okay, maybe this is not being so good for the people around me. And she's feeling like they're missing out on something, like I messed up their path, which is absolutely not the case. Again, we cannot do anything to anybody else, really, unless, of course, they're open to it and they want this to happen, which means you're helping them with their experiences. It's not that you're imposing anything on them or your intention on them. You cannot impose your intention on another higher self. So the thing is, yeah, they just decided to go. There's nothing wrong with that. And they might decide to stay, to chill out for a little while on the 25th, or go back into the matrix at any point. That's totally fine. It really has nothing to do with Clea. This was their decision. They had the sensibility where they decided, I might as well do this and take a little break. It's not a choice like deprive them of something. We already said, for example, in the case of Nick, he would have had a lot of fun with the aliens, It's unfortunate that he felt like he had to make a decision where he had to get out of the game for a little bit, but it doesn't really matter. It's not like this decision is hurting him in any way. We always just like to see that we are enjoying ourselves in the Matrix, but we already said that's not always the case. We certainly have not enjoyed ourselves on this planet for a very long time. So in this case, he also had not enjoyed, and he decided, you know what, I'm just going to take a breather. Since he wasn't going to go to New Earth, where we were all going to take a breather, we're going to take a breather on New Earth and still be in the game to a certain extent. But really, it's more like being in the 25th dimension in many ways in that sense. So we're like, this is a good compromise for us. We take a break, but we're still in the game. He didn't have this option because that's not what he had aligned with. He was going to go with the aliens. And he said, you know what? I really do need a break. I just need to be out of the game for a little bit. That's totally fine. There's no judgment, no right or wrong answer here. Lorrayne. Thank you. This is a continuation of the discussion that you're currently discussing. It seems that many people who have been very close to me chose to go back to the 25th because of their disappointment in how they led their life, like my father, my ex-husband, and Nick. Did their knowledge of the fact that I am a light worker contribute to their decision because of guilt, perhaps? Was it they're trying to help me achieve my goals that got them so far out of their otherwise chosen lifestyle that they ended up leading lives that left them disappointed? I'm not saying that they sacrificed for me. We are all masters. But I wonder if our interaction set them up for a type of awareness where they ended up feeling disappointed, whereas normally they would have taken their low vibe behavior at face value. Or if I specifically align with this type of personality, as opposed to someone else who might have been just as low vibe, but still chosen to go with the aliens or to a 3D chamber, as many other people were in the middle leaning towards the dark have done. Is it normal to know so many people who have gone back to the 25th when you said that they're a very small minority of the entire population? How many people have gone back to the 25th in total due to the takedown? And again, I am wondering because these people were so close to me. And there aren't that many people. I already knew, even before they told us how many, I already knew there weren't that many people. We know that it was only a small minority. They didn't go back to the 25th. So I have been curious about this. So basically, I've been curious about this choice of going back to the 25th as opposed to following up on an alignment that's been going on for 300 years. Not that 300 years is a long period of time in the great scheme of things, but still. So here's the answer from the 25th. So is it normal? We'll just say it's not typical. Most people do not know a lot of people who have gone back to the 25th for the simple reason that only a very small number of people has gone back to the 25th. In fact, less than 100,000 people have gone back to the 25th during this takedown. And so that's a tiny, tiny number. They're telling me 65,000 people have gone back. So yeah, less than 100,000, which again is a tiny, tiny number. But again, because of their own choice. It's always the higher self that decides. So is it normal to know these many people? It's not typical, but the way that Clea intended it was like, oh my goodness, is it me? Is it because of our interaction now? Because this is not normal. No, it's not typical because there weren't that many people to start with that were going to the 25th. But it's not that it's abnormal, as in something wrong. Something amok was going on here around Clea. And that's why we have all these people choosing to go back to the 25th. She doesn't know that many people that went back either. She knows a handful. In addition to these 3 people, there are another couple of people that she knows that went back to the 25th. But again, it's not because they interacted with Clea and therefore they all of a sudden felt guilty. Whereas as she interacted with somebody else or had been somebody else and they wanted to go with the aliens, they would have still gone with the aliens after helping her. They just decided they needed a breather. The higher self decided, I'm going to take a break because it doesn't matter. You can take a break at any time. There is no fault, nothing wrong with that. So we understand, again, Clea's question comes from what we were just discussing. She goes, hey, what's going on? Now, is it possible that through this experience, they realized that they wanted to reset and have different experiences? So they took this time to regroup? Absolutely. We create our experiences based on what we experience and what we want to set up for the quote unquote future. So in this case, we can say, well, I'm just going to keep going. Or, you know what? I'm going to take a little break and again, regroup or reassess or re-energize or just rest. And that can absolutely happen. But it's not happening because of Clea's fault, again, as if it's a bad thing that happened here. They're missing out on something. Or it's Clea's fault because they're like, oh, look, I could be like this, like she's a model of anything. But it's more because they've had basically an experience. They decided, they reevaluated, they decided that, you know what, this has been so low vibe that, you know what, I just want to take a break before I go back in fresh and decide what to do. I'm going to pull out of the game. I'm going to look around and see what I want to experience next. Then I'll do it. And it's totally fine. For all we know, they might decide they're still in the 25th, but they might decide they're not going to hang out with us that long. They want to go back into the matrix. So that's fine. So yeah, it's not typical, again, to know these many people that have gone back to the 25th, again, just because there are many. Because it's not a bad thing. It's not like all of a sudden these people are the worst of the worst. My God, they feel themselves so miserably. They disappointed themselves so miserably that they had to go back to the 25th. This is an emotional issue because it is a break to say, you know what? I was very low vibe here. I did a lot of low vibe things. I really didn't enjoy myself. Let me go to a more fun planet. That's a perfectly acceptable choice. These people just decided, you know what? I'm just going to call myself out for a minute here because really it is a minute. It doesn't matter how long they stay outside of the matrix. It is a minute. Because we are contending with eternity here, and it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really make a difference, is what we're trying to say. So Clea was thinking about this, again, feeling guilt, responsible for these people's outcomes, but it really has nothing to do with her. It could have gone either way. Nick could have gone to an alien planet like he had planned to. Nothing wrong with that. So yeah. And of course, I am glad to hear this, but at the same time, I am sharing it because I think it's so interesting, the intricacies of what it took for us to do certain things. The 25th has always told us we can change our mind at any time and decide something different. So I was wondering, why wouldn't these people, if they want to take themselves out of the game and take a breather, why didn't they go to New Earth? Because that's what we're doing, right? But again, it's an emotional issue. Maybe you just want to step outside completely for a second and be like, let me just regroup here and see what's up. So I totally get it. And I'm glad I asked this question. I hope you guys enjoyed the answer. Lorrayne, thank you. Okay. As you know, Luna passed away in July, and Luna is my family dog in Italy. I thought that the NPCs in my life were going to hold steady until we left. I had intended for her to. Isn't this going to happen more and more as we stay here longer? What are we still doing here? My mom said that the other dog and cat knew she was going to leave since last week, the week prior, and they would go and lick her while she was lying on her bed. We know that animals know when someone is not well or about to leave, but they're all NPCs now, so how do they know? They act as if they still have an essence and no veil. How does this work? Do they believe they have no veil like before, just like human NPCs still believe they're connecting to spirit or even channeling, even when there is no essence in them? So besides the part about, I'm really curious to see how it works when you have no veil, right? But you're still in the game, playing the game and believing, as an NPC, you believe whatever you believe. So it's interesting to me, the fact that animals have no veil, but also because the trigger here for this question is that we're going to be dealing, as time goes by, we are going to be dealing with more NPCs passing away. And eventually it's going to be somebody close to us. And so the point here was to avoid this type of loss. And but we have to keep the shell in place. And again, these NPCs are kind of breaking down. And so the longer we stay here, of course, there is more likelihood that this will happen. So I wanted to ask about all of this. And here's the 25th. Yeah, so we already said we want continuity, and the NPCs are just like bodies with essence in terms of their experience. This is how we set up so that we can even protect our own experience. So the NPCs are not obviously NPCs to us. We're talking about in general, obviously. Now we do see through them. And so, yes, it's the same thing for animals. We already said there were several NPCs in the animal realm, of course, to start with. And they know they have no veil. So the other animals do know that there is nothing there. There is no essence there. But from our perspective, when we look around, they do behave the same. So these NPC animals also behave the same way as the other animals. So they also would have no veil in terms of they see what they see and they behave the way they behave, just like everybody else in their community. So we already said, for example, animals also have light and dark, the team of the light, the team of the dark, etc. And it's not we like to qualify that. They're not splitting teams. We already actually talked about this. They're not splitting in teams like we are. They are their own group, but they also choose to have more lower vibrational, more dark experiences or more light experiences. That's what we mean to say. And so in this case, even the NPCs are very much similar to all the other animals in that sense. So they see things the same way that other animals see them. They sense things in the same way that other animals sense them. The difference being here that the other animals, just like we do right now, because they have no veil, they know that there is no essence there, but they still have to deal with them at a physical level. Just like we right now are dealing at a physical level with the NPCs that are left behind, knowing that they're not here, that their essence is not here. We don't see it because we still have a veil. We don't see it the same way that animals see it, but that will give you an idea of how aware they are, okay? But then beyond that, they see everything else the way we do, and they interact with this reality the way that we do. So yes, they would know that Luna's body was about to give out or break down. Luna, her essence has been gone for a long time. So we really are talking about the NPC, but they will miss the body just like we would miss the body of a loved one, even though it's already gone, if the loved one goes. Just like Clea is missing Luna, even though it was just our NPC here. So just because we know doesn't mean that we are not still in the game. So that's what that means. So in that sense, yes, even the animals that are behind, they behave just like Clea was mentioning in the question. There are a lot of NPCs, human NPCs, that think again that they're channeling, they're spiritual. They bring in these messages, etc., because this is the experience they were having before, that they continue having. Same thing with animals. At the same time, the other question that Clea had was, what's going on? I had intended for the NPCs in my life not to break down and not to pass. And we said that this is true, and you can absolutely do that. But we've also said that as time goes by, say that we were to stay here another 30 years, the NPCs in your life, a lot of NPCs in your life would pass. Because one, NPCs do not deal well with the absence of the essence. We said this many, many times. But also because we are keeping a shell in place. NPCs must pass at some point. Bodies must pass at some point. This is what we're used to in this reality. What we did say is that we've intended for things not to become a huge emotional problem for us. So Clea is intended not to lose anybody that would cause extreme drama in her life, like, for example, her parents or her brother or that kind of thing. But these other characters, even though some might be closer to home than others, they will pass because as time goes by, this is going to happen. Luna had a big tumor that actually Clea kept in check for a long time. She's had this tumor for 2 years, and the tumor was huge. She had intended for it not to grow, but eventually it doesn't even make sense that this dog she was already 17 or 18, will live another what? How much longer? Especially with a tumor that size? So that's what we're talking about. The shell still has to have, we are maintaining the shell to have certain rules, and we're managing it in a way where it doesn't become too dramatic for us. But at the same time, it does need to look, we do want it to look a certain way on the surface. So it kind of makes sense that Luna would pass away, or one of her dogs would pass away. And so that's what's going on. So not because she failed in intending or anything of the kind. She was actually okay with her passing. And it is true because I do know that she had not only a fantastic life, but that she's been gone. She's been gone since last year when everybody left. It just makes me worry that, of course, next time might not be my dog, right? Because my parents are also getting older. So as we keep the shell in place, again, things are meant to go a certain way. So we'll see. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.